Hey guys, this is Joe with Vassar's Woodworking again, bringing you part 2 of this Maple River slab I'm doing. Right here I'm just showing how I kind of set the epoxy mix in there. I do the same thing with the other part, just the other part's a little bit slower, so I kind of set it up, leave it run for a while. You can see where I poked a hole in the bottom of the epoxy container. That helps with letting that epoxy drain just a little bit faster, especially with the thicker stuff. Otherwise, you'll be waiting for quite a while for that to finish. All right, here you can see how I'm mixing this up. Uh, I move the mixer around quite a bit, especially after you start mixing for a while. It's good to stop and kind of stir it around, and if you feel like it's still really thick in some areas, you know you need to mix that into the rest of it a little better. When it all becomes really easy to mix and starts to get clear, that's when you've got a full mix on the two pieces of the epoxy. Here's where I'm adding the pigment, or the pigment that I'm using. This is the Eye Candy Ocean Blue pigment. This is one of the favorites I've had for orders on river tables. It seems to be one of the most eye-popping colors I've found. With the pigment, I do the same thing as when I'm mixing the two parts of epoxy. I'll mix for a while, and then I'll stop and kind of stir or turn the bucket. If I see any clear along the edges of the bucket, I'm not quite fully mixed with the pigment yet. So I'll just kind of keep working it, turn the bucket a little bit, go around the outside, go back down to the bottom of the bucket, kind of pull some of that up, and just keep turning the colors over until I feel like I've got a full mix on the pigment. All right, so here I'm showing how I pour the epoxy in. I kind of start at one end, work my way down. Then I'll stop and let it settle for a minute. Make sure that it's setting pretty level before I pour some more. At the same time I'm pouring this one, I'm pouring another table. So I'll kind of cut back and forth. You'll see where the video will stop, and then I'll come back and pour a little more. Here I'm pouring an area where it was cracked, and I pulled all the dead wood out of there, and I'm pouring this to look like it's like another river, or maybe like a pond that kind of flows into this river. All right, now I'm on to the part where I'm popping all the little air bubbles that come up. This takes a little while. I use a blowtorch. The only thing I have to be really careful of is towards the ends where I have the plastic. I can't get real close to it. If I pop that plastic, the epoxy is going to start to leak out of there. Every time this cuts back and forth, if you notice that epoxy is starting to look more and more like a flowing river, it's starting to turn over. You get lights and dark blues. This is why I like this pigment a lot. It gives a lot of different definition in the end, and it looks really awesome when it's cured. I found at times that if you heat for too long in one area on the epoxy, that spot will actually start to harden faster than the rest and will leave like a raised area. So you want to be real careful and not hit one area for too long of a time. I moved the camera to a little better angle so hopefully you can actually see some of those small bubbles popping and what effect that torch has on them. At this point you can see some of the fumes coming off that epoxy. That means I'm pretty much done popping at this point. It's starting to harden up and I'm not going to be able to pop any more of the bubbles, and I've got most of them, so I should have a good finished product at this point. Alright, subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be pouring the clear coat on this here in the next couple days. You guys don't want to miss out on that.